One day, without warning, a new terror chills the populace of Gotham City. Men who befriended Batman run for their lives. Men who publicly idolized Batman. Men who glorified Batman. These are the marked men of the stunned metropolis. Everywhere a strange vengeance is exacted by the man who calls himself the Wrecker. And everywhere, Batman and Robin the Boy Wonder are forced to the limits of their courage and daring as they come to deadly grips with the League Against Batman. In the offices and factory of the Gotham Mechanical Toy Company, manufacturers of Batman memorabilia, a new villain named the Wrecker bursts onto the scene. The Wrecker trashes the factory and all the expensive machinery, effectively putting the company out of business, before he begins a tirade against the rest of Gotham City, specifically targeting various statues and monuments made in the name of Batman and Robin. Breaking into a television studio, the Wrecker announces on live camera that he hates Batman. The world's greatest detective and the Boy Wonder had 3 of the Wrecker's brothers arrested, and ultimately they were executed. He swears he will get revenge on not only Batman, but everyone who glorified the hero and his deeds. As news of this attack spreads throughout the city, Bruce Wayne stops his important lecture to Dick Grayson on the power of observation, so that the two may become Batman and Robin, and asks Commissioner Gordon if they can look into the matter themselves. At the Batcave, Batman and Robin are able to narrow down the list of suspects to 2 men, both of whom have had 3 brothers electrocuted after being caught doing criminal things by Batman himself. On the other hand, the list of potential people who have supported Batman and Robin in the public sphere feels practically endless. Before they can act any further, the dynamic duo are called into action when a famous writer named Dwight Forrow receives a death threat from the Wrecker. Forrow makes for a tempting target for the Wrecker, as the writer had once written a book about the 10 greatest escapades of Batman. Continuing their investigation, Batman and Robin encounter the Wrecker attacking a sculptor who's made a fabulous work depicting the dynamic duo. However, when the sculptor tries to get involved in the fight himself and help out, Batman and Robin are captured by the Wrecker and imprisoned with the sculptor in a giant oven the sculptor uses to bake clay. They're only able to escape thanks to Batman and Robin using their quick wits to fashion a sling and burst their way out through the giant oven door. That afternoon, during a particularly hot day, Dwight Forrow is captured by the Wrecker and apparently killed. Over the next several days, the Wrecker launches a series of attacks on parade floats, murals, and fan clubs, all devoted to Batman and Robin. It is only later that Batman finally gets a break in the case, determining that one of the producers who made movies about Batman and Robin is working in a location near Gotham City. Sure enough, the Wrecker and his gang, disguised as a group of extras, attack the dynamic duo and the movie crew. Batman and Robin are seemingly captured and placed in a rocket ship, which turns out to be real and is launched up into the sky. However, Batman and Robin reveal they used dummies to trick a Wrecker into putting the fakes on the rocket, while they were able to attack the Wrecker. Batman is knocked badly in the head by a steel girder, but not before he's able to pull the Wrecker's gloves off, before the villain makes an escape. Later, when looking at the footage, Batman and Robin notice a distinct splotch on the Wrecker's hands after his gloves were removed. This gives Batman an idea, and he decides to investigate it further, promising to join Robin later. Robin goes to the GCPD, where the police are interrogating one of the 2 possible suspects who would fit the Wrecker's backstory. However, a few moments later, Batman shows up with Dwight Forrow and his brother, who the world's greatest detective reveals is the true culprit behind this crime spree. Dwight Forrow faked his own death at the hands of the Wrecker, a personality that he himself created, all in an effort to make his death more believable and to have the police and the dynamic duo focused on somebody else. Batman figured this out after he discovered Dwight Forrow was heavily in debt thanks to his gambling habits, and was using this whole scheme as an attempt to get out of the money he owes. The key to all of this was that mysterious splotch on the wrecker's hand. On the day that Dwight Forrow was kidnapped, it was remarkably hot and sunny while they were out golfing. Wearing golf gloves, only one small part of Dwight Forrow's hand ended up being sunburned, leaving a distinctive mark Batman and Robin were able to later notice on the wrecker. Taking the glove as a trophy, Batman reminds Robin that this all traces back to the lesson he was teaching Robin at the beginning of this story. A lesson on the power of observation. Hello and welcome to Comic Island. My name is Arden, and this is my recap and review of Detective Comics number 197. So this was another step in our fun journey throughout Detective Comics at random, meaning that we're just going from issue to issue completely arbitrarily. This issue is our only entry from the 1950s. By random chance, that's the only one that was pulled from this particular decade. And it's an interesting one, published in 1953, only a year before the Comics Code Authority was officially adopted by all the major publishers in the American comic book industry. And that is interesting, because this comic reads like those first two comics we reviewed in this series from the 1940s. We're not quite under the effects of Comics Code Authority, and it kind of shows in little ways. This is still very clearly intended to be material created for children. It's very much in the nature of this comic, how it's designed to tell stories, and the focus of its storytelling. And that's perfectly fine in and of itself. That's what all these comics originally were. But it also isn't under the relatively strict standards of the Comics Code Authority either. I mentioned that was pretty evident in the first issue we reviewed as part of this series, in Detective Comics number 91. This time around, it's even more apparent when the Wrecker openly talks about there being a death penalty, which makes sense. The death penalty was only abolished in Illinois in 2011. Just saying. And there's a sense that DC at the time was self-censoring, meaning that they decided for themselves what was and wasn't appropriate for children. Technically, that's kind of what the comic book industry always did. The Comics Code Authority was never some governmental operation or anything like that. It was all voluntary, which is why the whole thing eventually would fall apart. And we'll be talking about that and the gradual erosion of the effects of the Comics Code Authority. But it's interesting looking at these earlier comics where, to be honest, they're a little bit more creative than the Golden Age comics published under the CCA. It's a bit different, and you can kind of see it in the storytelling. That being said, we're only a year away from that era, and it's already kind of showing. The 1940s comics we reviewed were different in tone and sensibilities. There was more of a focus on them just figuring out these mysteries. That sense of mystery is still here, and it is kind of clever how the whole thing is solved with that sunburn on his hand business. But already we're getting more and more towards the classic Golden Age superhero storytelling, which honestly is indistinguishable from any other comic of this time period. At this point, there isn't much of a difference between action comics and detective comics. It's all just the same sort of kiddie superhero hijinks. Pretty much exactly what popularized Batman and would go on to popularize Batman even more in the 1966 series. This feels like it could be any episode of Batman 1966 or any of those Golden Age comics, regardless of whether or not the CCA is actually present in this comic, which it isn't. So there's little things that suggest maybe they wouldn't have done that even a decade from now, or even in present day. I have to be honest, I have a hard time imagining modern DC having the balls to say that Batman's basically gotten people executed by catching these criminals. Almost definitely they'd write it such that whatever state Gotham is, it's Illinois. There's no death penalty anymore, so Batman hasn't gotten people killed like this because it wouldn't jive well with the audience and with what we think of when we think of Batman. Personally, I don't really care. I'm not for the death penalty myself, but the idea of a superhero getting these people imprisoned and them being ultimately executed doesn't really bother me. Even for a big popular character like Batman. The way I see it, that's on the state, and it's not up to Batman to decide what they do with these people. It's been touched on here and there, such as when Tom King had Selena Kyle basically sentenced to death and Batman had to turn her in anyways because it was right, and he isn't the judge and jury in this situation. That's on other people. So obviously this is a complicated issue, and maybe I'm not giving modern comics enough credit because they are touching on this stuff, and fairly recently at that. Regardless, I don't love this comic. It has a lot of leaps in logic, such as when Batman and Robin are able to somehow replace themselves out with dummies, and the Wrecker and his crew never noticed that when they put these dummies into a rocket ship. But, you just have to kind of accept it all for what it is. It's a fun little kid's adventure, and it's not going to be the smartest thing in the world. In comparison, the 1940s comics were smarter. Even The Frantic Adventure with the Joker or The Case Without a Crime were both pretty intelligent stories that had some interesting stuff for them, despite being geared towards children. The Golden Age comics, however, are famously less intelligent and don't really get into these thought-through ideas. They're more focused on just having fun and selling these ads for kids regardless of the quality of the content at hand. Meanwhile, and I absolutely must talk about this because it's interesting that this is the first Detective Comics issue I've reviewed where no woman has a line or even appears on a single panel throughout the entire Batman story. Perhaps if one does, I simply missed it and it was just in a mere small moment throughout the thing, but I don't believe so. We are talking about a group of men solving a crime committed by another group of men, all of whom are targeting other men who are involved in the publishing industry, police, and the arts world. Because that's how this world works. There is no extra norms outside of that. There's no seamstress in the story even, like there was in The Case Without a Crime. There's nothing. We're a lot of societal change away from this time period, and it really shows. It's inherent in the comic at hand. Would I recommend this? Probably not for those reasons, and I honestly didn't find it that entertaining. But once again, like the first two comics we reviewed in this series, this is 100% a historical document. And it is worthy of attention and understanding because of it, because we can learn more about 1953. As we go farther and farther into this series, we get more and more into time periods that people were alive for these days. 1953 isn't that long ago to begin with. There's going to be plenty of people who are around by then, and probably some watching this video. But as we move more and more inwards, it's going to become less and less historically relevant because there's more and more documentation available about what that time period was like. There's plenty of documentation for 1953 anyways, but we're still getting a good sense of what this time period was like on a different level than what we typically see when we were talking about the 1950s and looking back. And this stuff is really interesting because of that. Moving forward, we're going more than a full decade ahead into the 1960s. So we're going to see the effect of this Comics Code Authority on this series. But we're also going to be transitioning into the Silver Age, and that's going to be pretty fun too. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching. If you like Comic Island, be sure to check out our Patreon page in the video description below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep reading comics.